Mom, honestly, you've just been a burden on this family for years. We all feel it. She said it right there at the dinner table, in front of her husband, in front of the kids, in front of everyone holding a fork and pretending not to listen. The room went completely still. A grandchild looked up from her plate with wide, confused eyes. Nobody spoke. I set my glass down slowly. No shaking hands, no tears burning the back of my eyes, nothing. And I smiled, because I had been waiting for her to say exactly that. My name is Celeste. I'm 37 years old, and this is the story of how my own daughter tried to erase me and why I let her think she'd succeeded. I'm not someone who ever walked into a room and commanded attention. I work as a home health aide, have for over 11 years now. Early mornings, late nights, the kind of work that leaves you tired in your bones, but doesn't leave much in your bank account. There's nothing glamorous about it. I've changed bed sheets, held hands through hard nights, and driven home in the dark more times than I can count. I did it because I'm good at caring for people. Turns out, though, that skill doesn't always protect you from the people closest to you. I raised my daughter Brianna almost entirely on my own. Her father left when she was 4, and after the divorce, I made a choice. I decided that her stability mattered more than my comfort. I turned down a supervisor position once because the hours would have meant she'd be home alone too much. I stopped dating for years because I didn't want confusing energy in our house. I clipped coupons. I drove a used car with a cracked dashboard. I said no to myself over and over so she could say yes to things that mattered. I was quiet about all of it. I never asked for a thank you. I just watched, and I worked, and I waited. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I drove a used car and clipped coupons. But I had been building something quietly, and nobody in that family had any idea. If you've ever poured yourself empty for someone who still called you a burden, subscribe to this community right now. Drop your story in the comments below. You are not alone in this. Click hype to help others find this video, because someone out there needs to hear it today. Brianna got married at 25 to a man named Derek. He came from a family with money, a big house in the suburbs, and opinions about everything. I tried to be happy for her. I was happy for her in the way you can be happy for someone while also feeling a strange shift happening underneath the surface. Something changed after that wedding, slowly at first, then all at once. Derek's mother, Sandra, hosted what she called a welcome to the family dinner a few months after the wedding. A nice gathering, from what I heard. Good food, photos, wine. I heard about it from a friend of mine who knew someone on the guest list. I was not invited. I didn't explode. I called Brianna and asked her calmly what happened. Mom, her voice had this new flatness to it. His family has a certain image. You just don't fit that right now. I asked her to explain what she meant by right now. She paused, then she said it plainly. They think you're a liability, and honestly, I'm starting to agree. I sat with that for a long moment. Liability. The word sat in my chest like a cold stone. But what came next was worse. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot. It was a photo from that dinner, posted publicly on Instagram. Brianna was in the center, smiling in a blue dress, arm around Sandra. The caption described her as someone who had overcome a difficult childhood largely on her own. On her own. Those two words burned. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands were completely steady. There were no tears, there was just a sudden and absolute clarity. She was rewriting her own story, and she was writing me out of it entirely. A few weeks later, Brianna called me with a favor. She and Derek were throwing a housewarming party, and the catering deposit was due. She mentioned the amount with the casual ease of someone who expected the answer to be yes. It's the least you could do, Mom, given how much they've done for us. I hesitated. I asked a few questions about the cost and the timing. That hesitation was enough. Before the week was out, I heard through a cousin that Brianna had told Derek's family that my mother refused to help with the party, that I was selfish, that I had always been that way. Then came the gathering I actually was invited to, a small Sunday lunch at Sandra's house. I went because I kept hoping things would shift. I walked in, and the kitchen smelled like fresh bread and expensive candles, the kind of warm smell that makes a cold room feel even colder when nobody's glad to see you. Sandra looked at me over her wine glass and smiled in that particular way people smile when they've already made up their minds about you. Brianna tells us you work with elderly patients, she said. How noble. It must be hard watching others live comfortably. A few people in the room laughed softly. Brianna stared at her plate. I smiled and said nothing. Then came the pregnancy announcement. I found out through Facebook, a post with a sonogram photo, pink and blue balloons, a caption full of exclamation points. I called Brianna within minutes of seeing it. I just didn't want drama around this, Mom. You know how you get. I had never once caused drama in that girl's life. Not once. But I absorbed it. I let it sit. I stopped calling first after that. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. Every time they pushed me a little further toward the edge, I took one quiet step back and let them believe they had already won. What they didn't understand was that silence has never meant surrender. Not for me. Here is what none of them knew. 5 years earlier, when the loneliness of caregiving and single motherhood felt like it might swallow me whole, I started writing. I created an anonymous blog, then a YouTube channel, about the invisible emotional weight of caring for others, about raising a child alone, about being underestimated by everyone who looked at you and only saw what you lacked. I never used my real name. I never showed my face. I just told the truth in the dark, and somehow people found it. 400,000 people, to be exact. They called the channel their lifeline. They said things like, "This is the only place I feel understood." Brands reached out. A content partnership deal came through. A publisher approached me about a book proposal. The income had quietly surpassed everything I made from my day job. While Brianna's new family was carefully constructing their image, I had built something real, something that actually mattered to real people, and not one person at that table had the slightest idea. I had never revealed my face or my name on that channel. Not yet. My former nursing supervisor, Dr. Patricia Osei, was the one person I eventually told. Patricia is the kind of woman who makes you feel like the room gets a little more serious when she walks in. Sharp, warm, deeply connected in the world of healthcare and media. I called her one evening and told her everything. The dinner, the caption, the pregnancy post, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for just a moment. Then she said, "Celeste, I think it's time people knew your name." What I didn't know yet was that Patricia had been following my anonymous channel for over a year. She had been quietly recommending it to colleagues, advocating for the creator behind the scenes with her publishing contacts. She didn't know it was me. When I told her, she laughed a short, disbelieving laugh, and then she got very focused very fast. Meanwhile, Brianna's confidence was growing. She had started referring to me in social settings as her childhood caretaker, like I was a hired professional she had simply aged out of needing. Derek's family apparently started discussing how they might need to set some boundaries with me before the baby arrived. A mutual friend overheard it and felt sick enough to tell me directly. They thought they were handling me. They thought I was someone who could be managed and minimized and quietly shelved. They were wrong. Patricia and I spent 3 weeks planning it carefully. The video was titled simply, "I've been hiding. Here's why, and here's who I am." It went live on a Sunday morning. I sat in front of the camera in my apartment. No dramatic background, no ring light setup. Just me, a plain wall, and the truth. I spoke calmly. I said my name. I told my story. I showed screenshots of the social media posts with identifying details blurred, the erased captions, the language used to rewrite who I was and where Brianna came from. I didn't use her name. I didn't have to. I looked into the camera and I said this. I was called a burden by someone I gave everything to, and I stayed silent. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I was waiting for the right moment to say it to everyone at once. By noon, it was trending. By evening, Brianna's friends were tagging her in the comments. Sandra's book club peers had seen it. The mutual social circle was erupting in texts and DMs.
My phone buzzed once. It was Brianna. "How could you do this to me?" Her voice cracked between fury and something that sounded almost like fear. I was calm, completely calm. "I just told the truth, Brianna. Isn't that what you've been doing all along?" She had no answer for that. The book deal announcement dropped 4 days later. My name, my face, and my story were suddenly everywhere. Not as a burden, not as a liability, as an author, as a voice. I didn't call Brianna after that. I gave her room to sit inside what had happened. Some of Derek's family members reached out to me privately with apologies that were awkward and too late, but still came. Sandra sent a short message that said she had been misinformed. I did not respond to that one. I kept going. I accepted the book deal. I kept creating. I stepped fully and completely into the life I had been building in the quiet and the dark for 5 years, and I left the door open for my daughter. Not wide open, cracked, on my terms, when she was ready to walk through it honestly. There is something I know now that I wish I had known to say out loud a long time ago. I never needed them to believe in me. I just needed enough time to show the rest of the world and myself what I was always worth. Has someone ever tried to erase your role in their life after everything you gave them? Drop your story in the comments right now. This community sees you, even when they didn't. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one, and click hype to help this reach every parent, every caregiver, every quiet builder out there who deserves to finally be seen.
Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments below. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else who has been told they are not enough. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.